Hi everyone, it's Nick here. I'm back for another session of drawing from Cardiff Life Drawing. We had an awesome class this month and I thought I'd do a little quick tutorial looking at some of the shapes we did in class. So I've got some drawing on the computer and we're going to look at the basic structures, a bit like the last video, to help us kind of see the three-dimensional shapes. Let's begin. So I've got this drawing today, which is one of the drawings I did a while back last year, and what I thought we'd do is just really quickly look at our basic structures to help us think about the three dimensions of the figure. So we can see the diagonal motion. We're always looking for this in class. We're looking at the dynamics of the figure, so we can see the diagonal motion across the shoulders. And remember, this is always easier for me to do when I'm looking at a drawing. Okay, when I'm looking at the real figure, it is trickier to do, but it's something we have to train ourselves to do. Now this is going to be parallel across the bottom of the upper torso, so I get my kind of square shape. And I can see in this drawing, I can see slightly the side of the torso. So this is kind of what we're looking at today. We're just reminding ourselves that the figure is always a three-dimensional object. Right, let's look at the diagonal motion across the hips here. So we have the hip and the hip coming across. So remember, we tend to draw just two body blocks, just keeping it really simple. I want to make sure I get a nice dynamic motion on there. In fact, I'm going to take some of that line out, and I'm going to take some of that line out because I haven't made that expressive enough. Look how strong this drawing looks in that diagonal motion. And then I want to keep that kind of square structure. I'm trying not to twist my perpendiculars in here, so I'm trying to keep that square structure. Again, I'm looking at the side of the torso here. This is the side, this is the back plane and the side plane. So I'm always trying to remember this three-dimensional figure drawing. So I've got something a bit like this. Now the spine line comes all the way down the back plane, it curves down here and drops down through here around the buttock. But these two squares should help me build my drawing. I've got the squash on here, and I would stretch between the rib down into the hip. So I'm going to stretch somewhere down into there. Right, if I wanted to build more, I could build the sacrum, and I can come up, something like this. I'm drawing this quite dark so you can see it on the screen, and it kind of builds that little shape that drops up into here. Okay, let's have a look at another one. This one. So now we're looking at, again, we're looking at the three-quarter figure, which is why we're just practicing these. You've got the front plane and the side plane of the torso. This is all the side plane of the torso. So when we're constructing this one, we're going to look across the shoulders, but actually I might look across the flat plane of the shoulders, because how I'm going to construct this is the side of the torso, and then the front plane of the torso, something like this, and then I'm going to have the lower torso about the same length again, dropping down here, and I'm going to go slightly diagonal with my perspective, so I'm looking at two boxes a bit like this. Okay, now we know that the rib cage isn't a three-dimensional box. This is why we get this softening curve in here. The rib cage is actually rolling something like this, okay? For that reason, that's why I get the edge of the rib cage and I get the stretch down to the stomach and the abs. Okay, so I'm getting a little bit of that shape. Okay, let's build a little bit more on this. I'm going to lighten these three-dimensional lines. The reason I built these is because I have the hip here, and I come down into the leg, and I drop down into the leg muscle there. I've got a bit of the squash on this side into the hip, so that might be my external oblique into the hip, and then coming down into the buttock. Try not to add too much length onto this lower box, because I'm just going to lengthen the lower torso if I'm not careful. And the leg's going to drop in something like this. Right. If I wanted a little bit more shape in the stomach, I probably would come around the stomach and then I'd change direction into the groin. Right, and you might see the other leg coming out on the other side. On this, I'm going to put the shoulder muscle in, and I'm just going to put the deltoid in, and I'm going to roll the muscle round to the front plane, because then it should follow into the pectoral muscle, and then down onto the bust. Okay, so I'm just going to put the bust is on the front plane. Remember, yeah, it shouldn't slide underneath the armpit. Okay, we'll just put the other side in. Again, in here, you're going to see a little bit of shape of the pectoral muscle and then the bust. What I'm losing there, which I didn't lose in this drawing, is the length of the rib cage here. So I just feel like now I've got to add a little bit more length back onto that rib cage. Something like this. Let's get a little bit more shape in the back. Let's drop the arm in just so we get an idea it's out of the way. And I've got a little bit of the lats behind the back and then coming into the rib. Something a bit like this. If this helps, great. We're just looking really quickly at some basic body twists. Let's look at this one. This one's nice. Let's pull these two across. This one here is two really nice twists. So we have a twist in the upper torso and the lower torso. We're also looking a little bit across, feels like across the top of the shoulders. Let's get those dynamics working. Across here, I'm just going to change that angle a bit. Quite a thick brush for this. Oh, and I don't really like that angle because look at the side of the figure we're looking at down here. So we've got to look at all the side plane of the figure, something like that. Okay, let's stylize this shape. See, all the time I'm drawing, I'm warming up. I'm also thinking, how can I analyze this stronger? She tapers in a little bit more, this model. So something a bit like this. But look at the lower torso. We're seeing so much more of the side of the lower torso. So the lower torso in a building block is something almost like this. It's a very different angle, the upper and lower torso block right now. A little bit more height on that. Okay. Just going to go to my eraser. I'm just going to make that a little bit stronger. And what I'm going to do is just lighten that off. Right, just because of the way I'm drawing it. Of course, I could put another layer, but I'm just doing that. Okay. Let's just build this up so we get an idea of how that works. Let's get our center line in. So this is our sternum. We're going to pause at the base of the sternum, and just for this, so we understand how it softens, we're going to build some of the shape of that rib cage, doing something like that. Don't mark me too strongly on this anatomy. And what I'm going to do is, hopefully, then I can get the flat length of the rib, and then how she comes in on the rib, and then she's going to come around the stomach. Let's see if we can get where the belly button feels like it should be on the front plane. So here you've got the roundness around the stomach down into the groin. Because what that's going to also let us do is show how she twists up into this. And I feel like I've got to change that center line a little, that sternum line a little bit to help get a little bit more shape. So you see how that's starting to come together. It comes down the sternum, it rolls in slightly, and then it comes out and around the stomach mass. Okay, let's drop this arm out the way, just so it's not important in this drawing today. So I'm just going to pull this right out here. And what we're going to do then is, because we've got these side planes and these front planes, I can roll that down into that pectoral muscle on the front plane. I can give me some of the lat here down into the rib cage, and I've got a little bit of squash. I might have a little bit more squash there. I tend to draw from the inside out, so I'm going to show a little bit of that hip coming right up, rolling around there, down into the buttock, and I'm going to roll that leg down. Okay. So I'm going to roll now around into that leg, and I'm going to get a little bit of shape on that leg, something like this. Right, but these, can you see how these three-dimensional forms help me build this all the time? Let's come around this stomach muscle and down into the groin. And then in this drawing we're showing a little bit of the other side of the hip, so it's parallel to this shape. And we're just dropping this leg out. Alright, in fact on this drawing, let's just, to make that read, we'll put the other side of that leg in. So we're just dropping those shapes in really quickly. Let's just drop back here and see if we can do one more. Which one's nice? This one is actually really subtle and nice. So we'll push this one along. Oh, let's push this one up because then I can draw it down in here. This is fab because look how we're looking across the top of the shoulders. Really good to think about the shoulders in this way. And as basic construction goes, I think it's really good sometimes just to draw that because it's going to give me the length between here right down to here. So I've got the front length and the top length here. That's going to help me and assisting to make it look like this figure is leaning back and I'm looking across the top of the shoulders. So this figure is doing something like this, you know. I'm not sure I've totally got that yet. The centre line of the sternum is there. But then look how, God, look at all of the side. Look at the hip here. This is all the side of the figure. And actually, we're looking at some of the back. So actually, as a three-dimensional plane goes, somehow we're doing something like this. This model is very flexible to be able to move like that. So you get this awesome kind of three-dimensionality to it. Okay. We're going to get so we get the softness of the rib cage, because the rib is actually going to roll here, so you're going to get some squash right into the external oblique, where we get a whole lot of squash in there where that rib squashes through there. We'll get a little bit more shape in this. Let me get a little bit of a smaller brush because this is slightly defined, so we're going to roll, put the buttock in here, but on the other side about the back of the hip, and then the other side the buttock is lifting, so it's lifting this side. We will clean up some of this. We're seeing some of the front plane of the hip, then down into the leg. Yeah, we're rolling something like this. Okay, it's a little bit scrappy on. Change brush size. I'm a little bit scrappy. I hope that's clear though. Anyway, but you can see how I'm putting that drawing together. Now centre line totally then twists. We probably would get a little bit of stomach. I haven't drawn it there. It's very slight here. I feel like I would want a little bit of stomach and then down into the groin. Kind of drawing my own thing now, not in there. But that's okay. These are warm-ups, and sometimes that's the fun of it. You start building it and building the shapes up and the body blocks. I'm going to pause there. I hope that was interesting. I'm just looking at those basic shapes, those three-dimensional shapes. We talk about it in class, thinking about the front plane and the side planes of the figure, how we squash and stretch, and how those two body blocks twist. Okay, hopefully I'll see you again. If you like what we're doing, give us a thumbs up, or you can subscribe, or join us at Cardiff Life Drawing and come to one of our classes. Cheers guys, take care.